Hello, my name is Joe Lewis. Welcome to another episode of Justice Now. I'm, of course, as your host. And this is the third educational show in which I promise to bring you on how to effectively file complaints against judges, lawyers, and law guardians in our family court system. I hope that the information that I gave you in the first two shows was helpful to you and helping you being able to maneuver through the family court system. Now, like I said, this show is going to be on filing complaints. And complaints come, why? Because in your feelings or your perspective, there has been some sort of unfair treatment, inaccurate or unjust or inefficient representation of you, or just some false judgment made against you, or your child or children involved in the family court system. So the family court, like every other court system, in these departments do service our other branches of our court system, which are our criminal branch and our civil branch in our judicial system. These branches are serviced by the same departments that take complaints against judges, law guardians, which law guardians aren't in criminal courts, but law guardians or in civil courts. So you have law guardians, lawyers, and judges. So these departments take complaints from these other branches too, but they service the family court. So if you feel that in some way that you fall into one of these categories where you felt you weren't legally represented right, or your children weren't legally represented right, or you feel that the opposing party's counsel did something that you felt may be of an unethical nature, or you feel that the judge may have rendered a decision due to some type of prejudice, bias, favoritism, or you may feel that the DA involved, and DAs do exist in family court situations, especially in IDV courts, which is the Integrated Domestic Violence Courts, and you feel that the DA may have done something of an unethical nature. You have remedies, departments that exist that accept complaints when these various issues, you feel these various issues have arisen in your interaction with the family court system. Now, the first area I would like to go into is basically, where do you file these complaints? Okay? Now, if your complaint is against a judge, you file your complaint with the New York Judicial Conduct Committee. Now, there are several branches throughout district areas in New York State. Their headquarters is in Albany, I believe, and that's where your complaint will go and be heard and reviewed by a panel of committee members. And these committee members are judges, they have various backgrounds, and they sit on that committee, and they basically review the information involved in your complaint. You have one branch that is here, and I believe our branch is on Andrews Avenue, and trust me, the addresses, telephone numbers to all these facilities, places to file complaints against judges, places to file complaints against lawyers, and the place to file a complaint against law guardians. All that information will be shown after the show is over with in the credits, so make sure that you stay tuned for those credits, because in there will be the telephone number, addresses, and everything of these facilities. But I believe the branch that we have here is located on Andrews Street, and it is the branch that services, if I'm not mistaken, Monroe County as well as Erie County. So I think individuals from Buffalo has to send their information to the place on Andrew Street, as well as the place in Albany. But eventually they wind up, sending that information to Albany. So this is where you go to file a complaint. Once again, it is called the New York State Judicial Conduct Committee. Now, if you want to file a complaint against a lawyer, it is the Attorney Grievance Committee. Okay? The Attorney Grievance Committee. Their address as well, like I said, will be put in the credits at the end of the show. So make sure that you are looking at the end of the show. I will put the address and telephone number of this facility as well. Now, if you want to file a complaint against a law guardian, the complaint to be filed against the law guardian is with the 4th Division Appellate Court. That's where you want to file your complaint with the law guardian, the 4th Division Appellate Court. And I would add 2 other places as well. File it with the I think it's supervising judge of the family court. And then there is a law guardian panel as well. So you want to file it with those 3 places. I would first file with the 4th Division Appellate Court. Then I would go ahead and make sure that the supervising judge of the family court was also aware that there was a complaint filed against this specific law guardian with the 4th Division Appellate Court. Then I, personally myself, would go on to send a complaint as well to the law guardian panel, which is a committee of individuals who sit on the panel, far as law guardians, the Department for Law Guardians is concerned. So I would send it to these 3 areas, and once again, I will make sure that all of this information of how to contact these specific places are placed in the credits at the end of the show. Now, first I'd like to start off with the judges. Okay? Now, when you contact the New York State Judicial Conduct Committee, when you call them, they will give you instructions on how to file that complaint. Okay? And they usually request that you fill out a letter, and in that letter, put your concerns or your complaint, the reason for your complaint in that letter, and submit that letter to them. That letter is then submitted to the committee in Albany, and then a decision is made on whether they deem the complaint a viable complaint or not. Now, me myself personally, I have a problem with just submitting a letter. Me myself, this is how I would approach it if it were me. I would never submit simply a letter in filing a complaint against an individual, especially a judge, and here's the reason why. The judge will also be notified that you're filing a complaint against them. The judge will also have the ability to answer that complaint. And by submitting a letter, what you have done, in my opinion, is prejudiced your own complaint, which means you've made your complaint less viable, less effective, because what it has turned it into is your word against the judge's word. Because here you have a letter stating that the judge done thus and so, and here you have the judge's response to your letter. So in my opinion, your letter has already been, in a way, prejudiced and limited in its effectiveness to getting you some results to what you feel has happened to you. So I would never just submit a letter. I would make sure that that letter is accompanied with any court papers that you may have. And first of all, I wouldn't write the letter as they instruct. Me personally, myself, I would make sure that the letter is typed out. Why? Because everybody's handwriting can't be read by other people. Sometimes people may have a problem reading what you wrote, depending on how your style of writing is. So to be on the safe side, I would go ahead and I would type that complaint out. Second of all, I would make sure that I would have any court papers to accompany that letter as well to support my complaint. Okay? So I would make sure any court documentation that I could get, court papers, court documents, court orders, and most importantly, court minutes involving your allegations in your complaint. And the reason why I say get court minutes, it's very important because court minutes and court documentation does one great thing for you in filing a complaint. What does it do? It takes the complaint out of the arena of being your word against the judge's word and basically is the judge's words against the judge themselves. Because what you will be presenting is the judge's actual statements, exactly what happened in the court. So it turns it from a he say, she say situation to no, this is what was said, this is what was recorded, and the court records show that there was various other individuals in the court at that time who was privy to what the situation was that took place in which I'm filing about in my complaint. So you want to make sure that you have the court minutes as well. Now, obtaining the court minutes is not a difficult task. You can go down to the Hall of Justice, and I don't believe it's the first floor. There is a level when you take the elevator or the stairs that is a floor that is between the first floor and the second floor, and I believe it's called the mezzanine area. And on that floor, you will find the court reporter's office. What you want to do is go down there, take your court documentation, make sure you know the exact date in which the issue took place that you'll be putting in your complaint. And you want to give all this information to the secretary at the desk. I've had experience with dealing with the individuals in the court reporter's office. Very nice, very professional. Trust me, have no problems whatsoever in helping you. So my advice is to go down there, make sure you have all this information with you, dates, the judge's name, any court documentation that you could have, so that they could tell you the exact court reporter in your court at that time that this situation took place. That's going to help you in finding out who the exact court reporter is, getting that court reporter's number. Then you can call that court reporter, request the information, date, time, and you don't have to get your whole case as far as the court minutes. The court reporters down there are very friendly, very helpful. They will narrow it down to a specific statement if that's what you need, a specific day, a specific time, a specific person's testimony. You don't have to get the whole court case. You can sort of a la carte it. I want this on this date and this that happened on this date, if that's how you want it. And it may take a couple of weeks for you to get that information, a week or so, depending on the schedule of the court reporter and what they have to do. And there usually is a fee involved, and it depends on the amount of information that you get. So be prepared to pay that fee. And like I say, if you a la carte it, your fees can be pretty minimal. If you get the whole package, your total court minutes from beginning of the case to the end of the case, then you may be talking about, you know, depending on how long the case was, several $100s to, you know, it could depend on how long that case was. But if you a la carte it, your expenses could be pretty minimal. So you want to get these court minutes as well and place them in your complaint. Now, the most important thing that I want to let you know is that when you file a complaint against a judge, there are rules, guidelines, ethical and legal guidelines that are set up that a judge have to obey, and if they violate these guidelines or rules, then it gives your complaint the type of teeth that you want it to have to be able to get some remedy or some type of action taken against that judge. And those rules are the canon rules for judges. Now, I happen to have a copy of them right here, and they are basically set up by the New York State Bar Association, and they're basically called the Code of Judicial Conduct. Now, these are rules set up, guidelines set up, that basically entail how a judge should conduct themselves in a court of law. Now, the New York State Judicial Conduct Committee, when they look at complaints, are definitely looking for violations of the Code of Judicial Conduct, which are called the canon rules. Now, you can go online and find the canon rules for judges, and there are about 5 of them. And those 5 rules are categorized to deal with different aspects of the judge's behavior while on the bench. And up under these 5 rules are sub-rules. So what you want to do is go online, type in the Code of Judicial Conduct / canon rules, and it will bring up some very reader-friendly forms of these rules for you. And what you want to do is read those rules very carefully, and then look into your documentation that you have received from the court reporter's office, court papers, and in your complaint. And you want to make sure that the rules that the paperwork, shows that the rules in some way have been violated, which means the rules are defined, okay, in the Code of Judicial Conduct, or the canon rules. They are defined. What you want to do is look for evidence in your documentation that shows a clear contrast to those rules, a clear violation to those rules. So when you type out your complaint, you want your complaint to say there was violation of canon rule number 1, section 1, a violation of canon rule number 2, section 3, a violation of canon rule number 3, number 4, etc. You want your complaint to entail a violation of one of those rules, because the Judicial Conduct Committee in Albany will be looking for that first off, because that is their real job, to look for violations of these canon rules. So you want to make sure that your complaint shows a contrast to the canon rules. And I'm going to read some of the titles of those canon rules right now so that you can get some idea of what these canon rules entail. And like I said, these are rules that have sub-rules up under them. So, like I said, you can go online and print these rules up, and you can read them for yourself and make sure that your paperwork show a clear contrast to these rules. And then when you fill out your complaint, you can say there was a violation of canon rule number 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 in your complaint. Okay, let's start off with canon rule number 1. A judge shall uphold the integrity and independence of a judiciary. That's canon rule number 1. And like I said, up under these rules are sub-rules. So make sure you read them carefully. Canon rule number 2. A judge shall avoid impropriety. Now, impropriety simply means improper actions while on the bench, and an appearance of impropriety in all of the judge's activities. Okay? So, that's canon rule number 2. Once again, read those sub-rules that really give the details of what those improprieties may entail. Canon rule number 3. A judge shall perform the duties of judicial office impartially and diligently. Okay? Which means there shouldn't be any prejudice, bias, favoritism, no partialness, and there should be diligence in that judge's activities. Now, that's canon rule number 3. And like I said, sub-rules up under that one as well. Make sure you read them. You find any of these rules being violated, put them in your complaint. Canon rule number 4. A judge shall so conduct the judge's extrajudicial activities as to minimize the risk of conflict with judicial obligations. Okay? That's canon rule number 4. All right, now canon rule number 5. A judge or candidate for election, judicial office, shall refrain from impropriety, political activity. Okay? Now, that's canon rule number 5. Okay? Now, what you want to do, like I said, is make sure that when you pull these canon rules up, make sure that in your documentation there is a clear contrast due to the judge's activity to those rules, those canon rules. And when you file your complaint, you want your complaint to be, your argument to be fully grounded in a violation of the canon rules, the code of conduct, which basically determines how a judge should act on the bench and how a judge should adjudicate over your case. Now, once you do all this and put your complaint together, you'll take your complaint down to the department on Andrew Street, submit that complaint to them in full, and basically wait for your response. What you can also do as well, which may work effective for you as well, is that anytime that you have a complaint or feel that you've been wrongfully treated by a judge, do a little investigative work yourself. I would basically ask the other individuals that have cases while I'm at court, how do they feel the treatment of this judge is? Do they feel that it's fair or unfair? I may even show up on days that I don't have a court case and that judge's court is open to ask individuals how they feel the treatment of this judge is. And who knows? You may run into 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people who may be also planning on filing complaints. And maybe you guys could network, exchange numbers, and file your complaints together. So now you have submitted 10 complaints against the same judge. All these complaints entailing violations of the canon rules, the code of conduct for judges. All this in your complaint. Okay? And now you have 10 complaints, 5 complaints, 6 complaints, or whatever. More than one complaint going to the Judicial Conduct Committee for them to review entailing the same judge. So that's a little extra information that I'm giving you that I would do if it was me. If I'm going to file a complaint, I'm going to sit down and talk to some of the people who have cases in front of that judge. Hi, I'm Joe Lewis, same judge. I feel their treatment is unfair and unjust, prejudice, bias. His prejudice, bias. How do you feel? I plan on filing a complaint. What do you plan on doing? You never know. One complaint can turn into 10 very easily. Okay? So, like I said, where to file those complaints, I will put all that information in the credits at the end of this show so that you will know where to go to file that complaint. Now, next, I would like to talk about lawyers, okay, and filing a complaint against lawyers. Now, lawyers, in my opinion, I have to say, and I have to say this about attorneys a lot, that attorneys are misunderstood. And I have to say this about attorneys because most people do not really understand what the attorney's job is as far as servicing their client. They really don't understand the full relationship that exists between them and their attorney. So they have, in a lot of ways, sometimes a false expectation of what the attorney should do. And because of that, the relationship a lot of times can be broke down between the attorney and the person that they're representing. So my first advice to you is to go online, and what you will find online is the Model Rules of Professional Conduct. Okay, now the Model Rules of Professional Conduct, and you can go online and find these rules as well. If you're going to have any relationship with an attorney, and I don't care what type of case it is, family court, civil, criminal, go online and print up a copy of these Model Rules. The Model Rules basically tell you the relationship that the lawyer is required to have with you, and the boundaries of what that relationship should entail. So that if you go online, you print this up and you read this information, you have a very clear understanding of what the lawyer can actually do for you, what that lawyer is expected to do for you, and if that lawyer is not fulfilling his legal and ethical responsibilities for you, you will know that as well. So my suggestion is that anytime you hire an attorney or you're given an attorney, appointed an attorney by the court, my suggestion to you is to go online. If you don't have access to a computer in your home, go to the library, go to a friend's house, cousin's house, family member's house. Go type in Model Rules of Professional Conduct. The Model Rules of Professional Conduct. Type it in. You can Google it, Yahoo it, and like I said, the versions that usually pop up online are very reader friendly, and it will give you a list of categories, and up under those categories, just like the canon rules, there will be subcategories that basically will tell you the relationship that the lawyer, by law, is expected to have with his client. What you, by law, fire services are supposed to get from your attorney. And, you know, like I said, those things are listed in categories as well. They're numbered in Model Rules. You have Model Rule 1.1, which covers competence. Model Rule 1.2, the scope of representation and application of authority between client and lawyer. You have Model Rule 1.3, which covers diligence. Model Rule 1.4, which covers communication, which means the communication between you and your attorney. Model Rule 1.5 covers the area of fees. Model Rule 1.6 covers confidentiality of information. Model Rule 1.7, conflict of interest and current clients. Model Rule 1.8, conflict of interest, current client, and Pacific rules. Model Rule 1.9 covers duties to former clients. Model Rule 1.10 covers imputation of conflict of interest and general rules. Model Rule 1.11, special conflict of interest for former and current government officers and employees. Model Rule 1.12, former judge, arbitrator, mediator, or other third party neutral. Model Rule 1.13, organization as client. Model Rule 1.14, client with diminished capacity. Model Rule 1.15, safekeeping property. Model Rule 1.16, declining the terminating representation. And a Model Rule 1.17, sale of law practice. Model Rule 1.18, duties to prospective clients. And then we go into Model Rule 2.1. Model Rule 2.2. These model rules are extensive, and they all are subject under category. This is client-lawyer relationship, which were the model rule categories that I read to you. They also go up under counselor, which start up under Model Rule 2.1, 2.2, 2.3. They also go into advocate, which is Model Rule 3.1, 3.2, 3.3. Model Rule number 4 is transaction with persons other than clients, under 4.1, 4.2, etc. Model Rule number 5, law firm and associations. Model Rule number 6, public services. Model Rule number 7, information about legal services. Model Rule number 8, maintaining the integrity of the profession. These model rules are very extensive, categories up under them, and up under those categories are the definitions in which they go into detail of what type of relationship that you should have with your attorney. Now, when you file a complaint with an attorney, the instructions are basically still the same. What you want to do, first of all, is make sure, okay, that you get all of your documentation, court documentation, any court minutes, and any other documentation that could validate your complaint. And you want to get that complaint to the Attorney Grievance Committee. Now, once again, I said I'm going to give you the telephone number and address of the Attorney Grievance Committee at the end of the show, so make sure you pay attention to those credits. Okay? Now, the Attorney Grievance Committee will also ask you for the same thing. They will tell you to submit a letter, handwritten, of course, and entail your complaint in that letter and submit it to them. I myself personally, like I said, would never submit a handwritten letter. First of all, major reason, you prejudice your own complaint, because with a handwritten letter comes no evidence, and when there's no evidence, because the attorney will be notified, just like the judge is notified when you file a complaint against the judge, the attorney is notified as well that you will be filing a complaint against them. So it turns it into, like I said, a he say, or she say, she say, or he say, she say situation, which is what you don't want. And number two, depending on your style of handwriting, your writing may be sort of difficult for an individual to read. And how far can a complaint go if it can't be read? So my advice, and what I would do, basically, not my advice, but this is what I would basically do. I would type out the letter to be on the safe side. That way, and I would make sure there's no grammatical errors when I type that letter. Make sure that everything is spelled correctly. And if you're using like Microsoft 2008, Microsoft 2007, 2010, 2009, these software programs usually have what they call a spell check feature in them. Click on that spell check, make sure all your words are spelled correctly and grammatically, that your structure of your complaint is okay, so there's no problem with anybody being able to read and understand what you're writing in your complaint. Second, like I said, I would make sure that I would get all type of court documentation. Okay. Court minutes is, if necessary, as well. You can go to the same place to get those court minutes that I told you about if you file complaints against judges. You can go to the Hall of Justice and that mezzanine area or level between the first floor and the second floor of the Hall of Justice, and you will find the court reporter's office on that floor. Make sure you have all your information with you, and make sure that you have your dates as well, the judge, so that you could give this information to the secretary and they could determine who was the court reporter. So then they could give you the number to that court reporter, and you can call that court reporter requesting the exact type of information that you want. Most importantly, you want your model rules of professional conduct. And you want to make sure that the paperwork that you have shows a clear contrast to the model rules of professional conduct, which means that the lawyer is clearly doing, in his own actions, his own words in court, in this documentation, clearly doing what the model rules of professional conduct deem necessary for him to do in order to adhere to these federal guidelines that basically set the boundaries for what his conduct should be as an attorney, or her conduct should be as an attorney. So you want to make sure that there's a clear contrast in your information. And when you file your complaint, you want to make sure that it starts off with the model rule of professional conduct, the judge's activity, the definition of the clear violation and contrast between, not judges, the lawyer's activity, and the clear contrast between the lawyer's activity and the model rule that the lawyer is supposed to adhere to. Basically, simple, that's it. Put your model rule of professional conduct in there. Say, I'm filing this complaint because I feel that there was a clear violation of model rule 1.3, 3.3, or whatever that model rule may entail based off of the information that you read in the model rules and the information that you have in your court documentation. And you want to be able to basically lay out your argument in that perspective, that here I see is a clear violation of the model rules of professional conduct. And then you want to submit this information to the attorney grievance committee. Once again, make sure that your information is written professionally. Make sure there are no grammatical errors. Like I said, if you're using Microsoft, any version from 2007 on has that spell check feature in it. And you can click on that spell check feature and it'll show you any misspelled words. You want to make sure your grammatical errors are taken care of. I just want to make sure that your paper is submitted readable, intelligible for the individuals that will be taking a look at your complaint. But you want to make sure that your complaint against that attorney is grounded in what I would, in my opinion, what I would look for is ground, sound, actual, factual information. So you don't want it to be a he say, she say. Me, myself, personally, I would never make an allegation against an attorney or judge for that matter, or a law guardian, that couldn't be supported by documentation, which means I myself would want to make sure I have documentation to support every allegation that I make. And so basically, if it was me, that's what I would do. That's why I say I would go get all this documentation. I would read the canon rules for judges, make sure that there was a clear contrast in action in the documentation versus the canon rules. And I would do the same thing involving the model rules of professional conduct. So I would make sure that the documentation supports every allegation that I'm making. So personally, that's the approach that I would take. Now, when we talk about law guardians, we're talking about a sort of different type of animal when we talk about law guardians, because law guardians are under slightly different guidelines. They are attorneys, okay? They have passed the bar, did all of the things that attorney does, and most of them, law guardians you see working in our family court system are attorneys who work on various family court cases as representatives for a petitioner or a respondent involved in a case, a husband or wife who are looking or seeking a divorce, and they work as law guardians as well. Now, I believe they've changed the name from law guardian to lawyer of the child. I believe that is the new name given to the law guardian, and that new name was changed some or added or put in place to represent a lawyer represent a child some time ago. So I don't think they call them law guardians anymore. I think the new name is lawyer for the child. Now, in filing a complaint against a law guardian, law guardians are governed, like I said, by certain rules. Some of them are or can be found within the model rules of professional conduct. Because let's face it, they still are attorneys. There are certain things that they still have to adhere to as an attorney. And what I would type in, but which you may be able to find online as well, is the Law Guardian Program Administrative Handbook. Now, this handbook is set up by the New York State Supreme Court Appellate Division, 4th Department. Okay? Now, so I would type in Law Guardian Program Administrative Handbook for New York State. And you should be able to pull up, like I said, a very reader-friendly version of that handbook. And in that handbook, it will give you various information on how law guardians should represent your child, because that is the lawyer that will be given to your child. And it will also go through the various guidelines in which that lawyer have to adhere to as a law guardian. Now, when you file a complaint against a law guardian, and before you file that complaint, make sure you get your hands on that information as far as the handbook goes, and that is the New York State Supreme Court Appellate Division, 4th Department. It is the Law Guardian Program Administrative Handbook. So type in Law Guardian Program Administrative Handbook / New York State Supreme Court or New York State. Should bring up a very reader-friendly version of that handbook. Now, like I said, the rules are not too far from the model rules of professional conduct, especially when we talk about the relationship, the client-attorney relationship in that model rules of professional conduct which govern attorneys. And that is the client-lawyer relationship. So a lot of those rules in the Law Guardian Administrative Handbook you're going to find in the you're going to find those rules as well in the model rules for professional conduct, because like I said, they still are attorneys. But the only difference is the place to file the complaint against a law guardian is a little different from the place that you will file the complaint against a regular average attorney. Now, the first place that I would start, if it was me, would be I would submit my complaint to the 4th Division Appellate Court. Okay? The 4th Division Appellate Court is the governing body over the Law Guardian program. So that's the first place that I would submit my complaint, to the 4th Division Appellate Court, which is located on East Avenue. And like I said, I will put the address in there and telephone number to that facility as well, so that, you know, make sure you stay tuned for those credits so that you can get all this information. So I would start there. Second place I would submit that complaint is to the Law Guardian panel. Now there is a Law Guardian panel as well that is set up that oversees the Law Guardian program. So I would start with the 4th Division Appellate Court and direct complaint to the Law Guardian panel. And me myself, I would go as far as to send a complaint to the supervising judge as well, to make sure that he is aware that I have filed a complaint with these two administrative bodies, the 4th Division Appellate Court, judicial body, and the Law Guardian panel, which is a administrative body. So I would make sure that, you know, that the supervising judge is aware as well. I would go that far. So I would basically make 3 copies of that complaint. Now I would do the same thing as well. I would get all my court documentation together. I would go to the court reporter's office if necessary, and I would get information. And that will be important to be submitted, so that it doesn't look like my word against the law guardians, because the law guardian will be notified as well that here's a certain complaint filed against you. The law guardian will be allowed to respond. So you don't want the situation to turn into a he say, she say, she say, or a he say, she say situation. You want the court minutes so that it shows that here's the various individuals that were present when this situation took place. Not only that, if possible, it may show the law guardian's words against themselves. Instead of you saying the law guardian stated this, you can show in your court documentation, here it is stated in front of the judge, and here's the rule violated in the handbook. Here is the rule violated in the model rules of professional conduct as an attorney that I feel this law guardian violated. And who knows, rules may be violated beyond the model rules and the rules in the Law Guardian Handbook. There may be contempt of court issues involved. There may be other laws violated as well. So what you want to do, like I said, is make sure that your complaint is grounded in sound, actual, factual knowledge before you submit that complaint. So when submitting a complaint against a law guardian, number one, submit that complaint with the 4th Division Appellate Court. Make sure that they have a copy of that complaint. Number two, submit that complaint with the Law Guardians panel. Number three, I said, like I will go as far as to send a copy of that complaint to the supervising judge of the family court, so that that supervising judge knows as well that the complaint is being filed against this law guardian. And I would send a complaint to the presiding judge of that case. So I would send this complaint to as many individuals as possible. I would hit every last remedy, every last judicial officer, making sure that as many people as possible know that there's been a complaint filed against this law guardian. Now, to roughly go over what we went through in the show, we've talked about how to file a complaint against judges. New York State Judicial Conduct Committee is where you want to file that complaint. Filing complaints against attorneys. The Attorney Grievance Committee, which is a branch of the Monroe County Bar Association that takes complaint against judges and against law guardians. Filing that complaint with the 4th Division Appellate Court. Filing that complaint with the Law Guardians panel. Filing that complaint with the judge who is the presiding judge. Filing that complaint with the supervising judge. Now, when you file a complaint with the New York State Judicial Conduct Committee against a judge, you want to make sure you have the canon rules for judges. Okay? Those are the federal legal ethical guidelines that the judge have to obey, and the New York State Judicial Conduct Committee are definitely first looking for violations of those rules. So you want to make sure you have them, read them carefully, make sure that your complaint entails these rules, depending on how many you see or your information deems has been violated. Lawyers, you want to make sure you have a copy of the Model Rules of Professional Conduct for Lawyers. You want to make sure that you read these rules if ever given an attorney in a family court setting, criminal court setting, or civil court setting. Why? It is important that you understand clearly the relationship that you are supposed to have with your attorney and the limitations that your attorney is given based off of these rules, so that there is no expectations from your attorney or from you that you're looking for your attorney to be able to fulfill that your attorney cannot fulfill because of these rules. Plus, you want to be able to understand what your attorney should do for you as your attorney. And if these guidelines are not adhered to, you want to make sure that these guidelines are in your complaint and that your documentation shows a clear violation of these guidelines, which means the action in the complaint shows a clear contrast of the actions that are supposed to be taken by that attorney. Last but not least, Law Guardians Handbook. Okay, you want the administrative handbook for law guardians. Also, use that hand in hand with the Model Rules of Professional Conduct, because these individuals are still attorneys. The only difference is you're filing your complaints in different places. Attorney Grievance Committee, and the law guardian or the lawyer for the children, you will be filing that complaint with the 4th Division Appellate Court. Once again, the Law Guardians panel, the presiding judge as well as the supervising judge of the family court system. Now, that will be the end of my educational show, or series of shows that I'll be bringing to you. I hope that these shows were very helpful for you in being able to sort of educate you to what the family court entails, the roles of the individuals who exist in that court, and how those courts proceed judicially, and if there is any dissatisfaction, how to go about seeking a remedy through filing complaints, the departments in which to file those complaints, the information that makes a valid complaint for you. So it's been my pleasure to be able to bring you these series of educational shows, because in my experience as doing court advocacy for the years that I've been doing it, I thought that I would hit issues that I have constantly seen from various clients of mine who have asked questions, and these questions seem to be reoccurring. So the more major questions that I have been getting through phone calls and through doing my work as a court advocate, I thought that I would sort of construct these shows around those various questions. And I always give the advice to make sure that you seek the advice of an attorney. Make sure that any question that I try to answer for an individual does not go beyond the bounds of answering any legal questions. I make sure I point individuals in the direction of an attorney, and I advise them to seek the advice of an attorney as well. So it's been my pleasure to be able to bring you these shows, and there may be more educational shows coming in the near future. But as of right now, that completes the 3-show series in which I was bringing to you. So I hope that they were very helpful for you. So that ends the series, and it's been a pleasure, like I said, to bring these shows to you. Once again, my name is Joe Lewis. You've been watching Justice Now, coming to you from Public Access Television, the People's Network. Thank you for tuning in. Until we meet again, may God bless you, and you have a pleasant remainder of the day.